Hello and welcome to another episode of Something Up My Sleeve, the show which asks magicians what is up your sleeve, both metaphorically and perhaps literally as well, because you never know. And our guest today has an extensive client list and also has performed in basically every magician's dream setting. So every venue he could talk about is a place where any magician would love to be and would love to repeat being there every year. So we have several different shows and acts to discuss. So please help me welcome Nathan Coe Marsh.
If you watch close enough, you will actually see it dematerialize into nothingness, like a millennial's dream of home ownership.
He delivers on every front.
We got a really cool guest for you now.
And speaking of best magicians in the world, we're here with Nathan Coe Marsh.
One of the stars from the Penn Teller TV series.
Now he has performed all over this world.
Has entertained service members on military bases overseas, including Iraq and along the Syrian border.
Where he's amazed crowds with mind-blowing stunts. So dynamic.
Woo.
He's groundbreaking.
The show was amazing. Nathan is hilarious.
Thoroughly entertaining. I would hire him in a heartbeat over and over and over again.
Okay, I'm freaked. I need an old priest and a young one.
Wow! I mean, come on, guys. That's impossible.
It's so funny. So much fun. I laughed the whole time. My cheeks hurt right now from laughing and smiling so much.
I have to say, it was outstanding performance. They're a tough group of people, but Nathan had them falling out of their chair. They just absolutely loved them, and I'm thankful we found them.
I hope that the magic of being alive still finds ways to surprise you. And when it does, I hope you can hold on to it.
Hello, Michael. Such a privilege to be here. Good to see you.
Welcome to the show. So glad that this worked out. First off, I want to say that I cannot believe we obviously run in some of the same circles, and I cannot believe that we haven't at some point met in person, or if we have, it was a long time ago, but
Well, kind of a cool way to meet, right? Because we get to dig in and really talk about the craft and have some fun. So this is awesome. And then later we'll run into each other and enjoy a nice beverage of your choice.
That sounds perfect. And if you come visit me in New Orleans, there's a lot of beverages to choose from. I was going to say, I enjoy meeting this way because this way I can't tell how tall you are. And most people are much taller than me. So I think I'm more confident meeting people on a Zoom call. But let's start off. Like, I know most of these, you have to give your whole background story and everything like that. It probably gets rather monotonous for you. And of course, we want to know a little bit about what got you started in your influences. But I think what's on everyone's mind is, what is this gorgeous background that you have behind you? Is that real, or is that green screen?
This is real. This is not. This is no avatar stuff going on here. This is Rich and Sue Block's beautiful theater, Dickens Parlor Theater, right on the beach in Delaware. I'm in the midst of, just opened last night, a series of shows here. So I'm looking forward to this tonight being full of people, and for about 60 minutes together, just everything else that's going on in our lives disappearing, and us sharing an experience right here and right now with a group of strangers. So so we're here. It's
lovely.
Beautiful.
It looks gorgeous. How many does it seat?
I would say around, I don't have it's funny. I almost never ask that question, and I get it all the time from other acts and in different rooms. I'd say about 75 maybe would be my guess, but I'm not great with the crowd size estimation for sure.
Well, unfortunately, if you wanted to get tickets to this show, it's a little too late because I need to point out that we are pre-recording this and we're showing this episode in October. So at this time, Nathan's actually going to be on a cruise ship. He will no longer have that background, but he'll probably have a pretty exotic looking or beautiful background to work with there if the internet works for him. But you can probably
We
catch
do
him
have
again at the
we
Dickens.
yeah. And we
Go
do have a
ahead.
discount code for time travelers. Time travelers that are watching
Oh,
will get you a
excellent.
special
Oh, that's right.
discount. Yeah.
Sometimes I forget that most of our audience is magicians. So if you have earned your time traveler badge, and you want to get a ticket to the theater and it's not sold out, just so we know, how long is that run? How long is a typical run
August
there?
25th. It's 7 days. So this
A
is so
7 day
I
run. That's
started last
beautiful.
night
Wow.
was a Monday. Yeah. Absolutely.
Fantastic. One of the many amazing venues that I want to ask you about. Let's start with the type of it, because I think every show I'm going to ask you about, you've probably done something different. So I would like to know, first off, what type of performance are you doing there, lengthwise, style or effect, in comparison to what I'm going to ask you about later?
Yeah, it's a 60-minute set, and that's one of, we live in an amazing time for magic with all the magic venues that are around that are beautiful and that have their own different formats and whatnot, but quite a few that are long format shows where you can really build threads that interconnect, things that pay off later. And an audience can really, I much prefer this as much as I love the Magic Castle, right? But fitting 20 minutes, there's much less you can do in terms of relationship building, in terms of kind of a narrative arc, in terms of things connecting back together. That's a little more, how do I squeeze everything I want to do into this very, very tight space? And so, yeah, this is a place, the Loft in Lake Tahoe is another, with about a 65, 70-minute show. The Magical Mystery Show in Hawaii, that I opened, a 70-minute show. So it's great that there are these spaces for people to experience a full evening and get lost in our whole world and see the best of what we have to offer.
So what would be like a common thread along a show like that, like for you personally, to connect the story of your show when you're headlining something that is about an hour long?
Yeah, so there are two threads in my typical 60-minute show. One of them is not here because I'm working on a new thing, and I had to kind of, one of the disadvantages of having stuff that connects together is, when you're trying to plug something back in, it's a little less modular, right? But there are two threads in my main 60-minute show, and one is a time travel thread. So there are
Cool,
things
perfect.
that I keep finding that are, messages that don't make sense. That it's like, hey, don't worry about seeing Avatar 13. Like, skip it. And then there's a moment in the show. Man, I don't want to ruin it too much, but there's a moment where time travel becomes involved, and we realize that I've been in the future going back to this particular show to mess with some things and change some things around and fix some things. So that's one of them. And then the other is I do a piece.
That's so perfect though, because I didn't realize that one. So it's perfectly appropriate that some of our viewers go ahead and buy a ticket for 2 months ago. I love that.
Yes, yeah. Come here the week of August 19th through 25th. Absolutely. And then the other main thread started just spending some time. So I don't have kids, but I've spent time with my niece's young daughter. Yeah, right. Yeah. I've spent time with my niece's young daughter, and some of the things that she was saying these hilarious, adorable things that then got built into a routine. And now there's a kind of 3 routines that, again, it's the kind of thing, as you understand, like you want people to experience it the way it's meant to be experienced rather than let me talk to you about it. So there are some things that involve her that keep popping up. So she, in the context of the show, makes psychic artwork. And so there's a routine that pays off with that. And then there's a piece where it's like, hey, I tried to create a piece of magic that would be of interest to a 4-year-old. And so for the next couple minutes, let's all try to experience this with the joy and the simplicity and the utter insanity of a toddler's brain. And that piece takes off with it. And then the tag at the very end is that trying to think the most efficient way of saying this without without kind of ruining the whole thing. But what it comes to at the end is that my efforts to create a piece of magic for her didn't make a lot of sense, because she doesn't need magic, because she lives in a world where the surprise and the freshness of the world, she doesn't need magic to see that. I need magic to remember that the world is still that way. And that connects into kind of my final message of the show. And it connects in a different way with, there's a piece of, so both my parents are artists, they're visual artists, they're painters. And there's a piece that connects to the way my dad's a landscape painter. And there's a piece that connects to the way that he creates things by paying very specific attention to what's in front of him right here and right now, and how that changed kind of the way I look at the world and gave me a different awareness of the things that are around me and really appreciating them and enjoying the moment. And so there's a thing about the magic of the moment. And so from both the lens of the toddler and the lens of the 87-year-old father, between the two, there are different perspectives on being in the moment. And because for me, the big purpose of magic, right, is that we live in a world where we have all these pat answers, where it feels like we understand everything. And that's very hard. You know, when we can pick up a little box and get the answer to almost any question, it's very hard to get a sense for the ancient sense of wonder, which I think is a basic part of being human. And so there's underneath, so there are these threads of stories from the East, there's this time traveler thread, but underneath it, there's a theme of there's a theme that being alive, this sounds so corny which is why it's an under theme and not an explicit theme, but that the real magic is being alive and finding ways to appreciate where we are and what's going on. And so that's, on another level, that's kind of the thing connecting the show together. So
I love that, and
it's hard to establish all that in 15 minutes to our.
Yeah, or well, even and definitely in less time than that. But what you're talking about with wonder, which I don't know if we can sum it up, and we try to always find a quote of the day, and I feel like somewhere in that in what you just said is our quote of the day, because it's truly what we have to remember as performers, as magicians. What we're doing is that we have a unique art to create a sense of wonder and essentially turn an 87-year-old into a 4-year-old at the moment that they're experiencing that wonder.
It's a jolt. It's a jolt of energy. And what really reminded me of it too was really cool. So on the flight over here, scrolling Facebook, and a buddy of mine in San Francisco was at a bar in San Francisco listening to a pianist. He was raving about this pianist. I noticed the painting over the piano, and it was painted by the guy who got me into magic, a guy by the name of Mark Stock, who is a brilliant painter. He was a friend of my parents, and so at one of their dinner parties, he borrowed a dollar bill and had it float right on the table in front of me. And it was cool to just, it put me back, it had me thinking back to when I was 11 and what that feeling was. And it was this jolt of excitement. It was this jolt of, here's the normal world, and here's everything that you're expecting, and here's this fresh thing that that I know is the result of human artifice. I know it's the result of human creativity, but it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like it can be. And that conflict of the way, and obviously something what Hayden's talked about in much richer ways, but the way that conflict, we don't have a pat way of dealing with that. That's not part of our normal social interactions with people. It's this disrupt. And so the kind of social mask falls away. And I think it brings us all together right into what's going on right here and right now. And so, yeah, I think that's a very important thing about what we're doing. And it's not that every magic trick does that. It's not that but I do feel like if I can do that for one person in a night, and maybe it's a moment, maybe it's 2 moments, but for just a fleeting moment, for them to get that jolt that brings them back, I think that's a huge gift that we have to offer people.
And I'd like to take the opportunity to do that for you. So if I could create a sense of wonder for you just really quickly, because we don't always do a trick for the camera. So there's that option. But I forgot my first question to you, which normally is, what is something up your sleeve? Which normally I mean metaphorically, but I have something up my vest. Actually, I wanted to show you. I have this. Yeah. So
That's adorable.
That's the appearing kitten trick, which I've become known for. Since she was going to interrupt anyway, I figured we'd make a magic trick out of it. Okay, now can you sit over
She
here?
is adorable, and I saw and let me plug you, Michael. For those who haven't seen it, there's a great TikTok where you make her appear out of a hat that I absolutely love, and people should check out.
Oh, well, that's actually this guy, but he's too big to fit in the hat anymore. This is fit
buddy.
So there's we have a whole cast. We have a whole kitten cast here. So yeah, he likes your hat trick. You remember your hat trick? Yeah, you're adorable. Okay, sit over there.
Like, Dad, I'm sleeping. Yeah, let me be.
So back to so that was a little bonus for you. Back to that question. Before we get into some of the other venues, what I usually mean by saying what is up your sleeve is what makes you you. What makes you a specific performer, Nathan Coe Marsh, not just any performer that you can book for a show that has you stand out. What is something up your sleeve?
Yeah, so my work is very personality driven. It's very much the writing is very important to me. So it's in the way that it's not they're stand up moments, right? They're stand up like with a comedian that have the same laughs per minute that you would get from a comic, but in the same attention to detail that a comic is putting into writing their show, I've put into writing my show. And so you have stuff that's very culturally of the moment. You have something that's contemporary. You're going to laugh really hard, and in the same way that you would laugh with a comic, not like magician funny, like actually funny. And you're going to experience things you haven't experienced before. So yeah, that's what I care about. I care about creating. I care about finding ways to create really amazing experiences that take people out of themselves, like we were kind of talking about, but also that comment on the world in fun or interesting ways. So yeah, that's
I love what you said there. The quote, magician funny.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe explain that if anybody's not. I know exactly what you mean, but
I think we know exactly. But I don't want to frame it in a negative way, right? Because I think there's a place for, the House of Magic has many rooms, and we all, magic is better, and we're all better when we're doing the things that excite us, right? I'm a huge believer in Juan Tamariz's Seven Veils, and one of those, right, is the material exciting you. And so whatever really turns you on as a performer, go with that. And whenever I make these kind of judgment things, I'm not saying this is bad for other people. I'm saying it's not right for me, because I'm trying to cut down and figure out what I want to do, the stuff that I'm excited about. But yeah, I think puns from the 1970s, I think, all of those kinds of things. Because what happens, and the other way that it's not really a criticism of other people is most magicians are not working performers. They have lives, they have families, they have jobs, and this is something they do for fun on the side. So I don't think they need to feel compelled to go write an original, funny thing to do a trick to make their niece or nephew happy, right? The guy who got me into magic, the guy who lit my flame, was an amateur magician who had an amazing career outside of magic and an amazing life outside of magic. But yeah, when we come to magician funny, it's part of that is, and a lot of other people have talked about this, but we're one of the only crafts where you buy the trick and here is what you say, and people say the thing that, was written either for these generic instructions, or now in the age of video, this becomes harder and harder. You'll see performers where you can kind of see the source material, where for this 3 minutes, it's like somebody's channeling Mike Lamar, and then they're channeling David Roth, and then and that's not so much them, that's part of the challenge of the medium, because the gift of the medium is you're just watching and you're doing what you see, and you're not thinking through each particular step, and you're not having to imagine what each step looks like. And so you get these things where it's not and an audience feels that, right? An audience feels when this is not you, when this is not, and it's a little bit creepy. It's one of those things that in real life is a little bit creepy when we're taught that if something doesn't quite match up, right? If somebody looks or acts a certain way, but it seems like they have a different intention, that's a red flag. And it puts up a barrier between the audience and us. And so apart from, one of the joys of any art is sharing something about yourself and connecting, it's us connecting through the way we see the world and understanding each other through somebody else's eyes by interacting with something that they've created. And when you're just like, here's this thing, let me, let me do it in the way that everybody else has been doing it. And so to your question about magician funny, that means it's not really funny because people feel that this isn't an observation that dear friend of mine I've been watching recently, who I have huge respect for, fabulous performer. He's working to develop to do cruise ships. So he's working to get his 90 minutes. So he's got to add a lot of material, right? And I've been watching his shows recently, and it's gotten much better with respect to this. But one of the things I noticed is I can tell the jokes that he thinks are funny and the jokes that he's saying because he needs a joke at this point and it's something that he's heard. And even if I didn't know the source material, even if I didn't know, oh, that's this person's joke or that's a joke we think of as hat, in his relationship to the joke, I can tell. And the lines that they might not be the funniest, but the ones that line up with his sense of humor are the ones that make us the most comfortable as an audience. And you feel the audience liking him more because we can feel that we're connecting to who this person is and not this representation of how they want to be seen. We're not connecting with a mask that somebody's put on because they want us to think a certain way about them. So that's what I mean by magician funny. And it's not attacking anyone. It's not, right. I understand the reasons for it, but yeah, that's what I mean.
That was an excellent explanation. I think you're absolutely right. And on many occasions, it's very easy for other professionals to even find the joy in criticizing the people that aren't necessarily putting that much effort into their creativity in their comedy or in their effects. But remembering that not everybody is a full-time performer. Not everyone needs to put that much work into it as if they were getting on stage or making content when they really just love the art and want to learn a few things to be able to entertain their friends. That is a different scenario. I call it though, but when you talk about what seems unnatural or creepy, I call it cringe magic. So like that would be the hashtag cringe magic.
Yeah.
That would be the term there. But you're absolutely right that's when you find what works for you. That's when you break out of that sort of mold and find your style. And one thing that watching you perform, watching the videos of you, your promo video of what I saw on Penn and Teller, you have a very natural style while you seem to be very scripted. And you've put a lot of writing into what you do. It doesn't come across as scripted. It comes across as so natural, as if you could be improvising the whole time, except that you just have this poise about you. So is there a balance there? Do you feel that you're more scripted, that you've developed this poise, or that you're able to pick up on impromptu moments? Can you discuss a little of that?
Here's the big picture of all performing is there's what I call performance bandwidth, which is that in any moment, there is so much conscious attention that we're all able to put into the moment, right? And so if you think like, this is my capacity, right? Now, if you layer in all the things that have to go through your mind when you're performing, is this person tuning me out? Can that person see me flash? What do I do next, right? What do I say next? The more that you can offload to be automatically reflexive, paradoxically, the more present and in the moment you can be. So the more tightly scripted I am, and there is a both level of experience and a level of skill and whatnot to feel the things that you're saying as you're saying them, right? But if I have to invest that effort in really feeling the things I'm saying as I'm saying them, and at the same time, I have to think about what I'm saying, and I have to think about the move, and I don't feel confident about the slight, the secret thing that's going on, and I don't feel confident about where I'm going on stage, how I'm moving, where do I pick this up, where do I put this down. The more I have to think about in the moment, the less present I can be. So the more prepared I am, the more tightly scripted I am, the more I've worked out my blocking, the more I've worked out with very clean precision what and know what's going to happen beat by beat, the freer I am to be in the moment and to respond to what's happening as it happens.
You may have just shed some light onto what's been kind of a question in my mind about how our brains work. But to add to what, and I'll explain that what I'm saying because I would love to get your take on it. But to kind of add to what you're saying, I accidentally said something during it wasn't scripted. I just kind of said an answer to a question for the Lance Burton Teen Seminar once at one of the conventions, and immediately Jeff McBride quoted me because he thought it was so well put, or that was so significant, and that I said you have to know your script to be able to veer from your script. The better you know your script, the more you can veer
and that
from
comes
it.
that comes from Eugene's writing as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So on that note, I have found that I don't know how your brain works. I'm very ADHD, and with everything in my life, there's constant like distractions, not just from my cats, but from everything. But yet when I'm performing, I can think of these moments when everything was clear in my head, but yet so many thoughts happening at once, like you're talking about, where you have to answer all these questions in your head in the middle of your performance, but still remember your script. And especially if something's going wrong and you're figuring out the situation, overcoming it, how you can do all of that at one time and how your brain is able to function. And I've noticed that for me personally, that's the only time when I'm in performance mode, that's my hyper focus. That's when I seem like the ADD either works for me or I'm able to overcome it. And not in the rest of my life, but if I'm in performance mode, if I'm on stage, that's when it's like I'm able to achieve that level.
Yes.
Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, and anything I say would just be speculating because we're both. This is just something we've experienced, right? We're not scientists, we're not whatever. But I mean, I think we are. It might be related to the stage doctor, right? The thing that Patton Oswalt's talked about this, and I think so many performers have felt this, that okay, you have a really bad cold or you've got something before you go on stage. You can be so yeah, I remember me and Christian Painter were on a military tour, and we had food poisoning in this just blazing hot bar in the Bahamas on this base, this kind of submarine base out there. And it's this little bar and it's just blazing hot, and we are sick and we're feeling very sick into the toilets and the stalls next to each other and being like, glamorous showbiz, right? But then we get on stage and goes away, right? You feel 1,000%. You're the healthiest you've ever been. And then when you get off stage, it hits you 100 times harder because your system is so focused. Your system has pushed down all those symptoms and everything else because you're so focused on doing what you have to do. And so I think what you're talking about, which is absolutely true, I have never been funnier and more charming and everything else as when I'm on stage, right? And the things that come to me in the moment when I'm on stage. And it's one of the reasons that writing on stage, in the sense of, okay, there's this for me, well, we can talk later about the actual process of developing the material and how the script comes about and all that other stuff if we want to. But the best writing for all of us happens on stage, right? And it's one of the reasons it's so important to record your shows and listen back and all of that, because your brain is working at a higher level. You're more in tune to the moment. You're more in tune to the situation and the people around you. And so things come out of your mouth that don't come out of your mouth when you're at home in your rehearsal room trying to figure out what's going to be funny in this moment, or sitting in front of a laptop trying to write, which I don't think is the way to, but we can talk about that later. I don't think that's the way to come to a script, is just blank paper in front of you. But yeah, I just to vouch, the phenomenon you're talking about is absolutely true. It's absolutely real. And I think it may be related to this idea of conscious bandwidth and it may be part of why we feel so in the moment when we're performing, and we feel so present in this really, my partner commented on how during COVID I was just a different person, because even doing online shows, which helped me not just financially but just kind of spiritually too, um, even that lack of connection, that lack of being in the room with other people and doing a show and creating these moments, like I was a sad little boy to be around. And so I do think this is all connected in terms of our ability to focus when we're in that moment. Um, so yeah, I don't know why, but I'm glad it's there, and understanding that it's there. The question is, how do we take full advantage of that? And I think the answer is through very rigorous preparation and attention to detail and blocking and scripting and cues and production design and everything else that makes a show a show.
Yeah, no, that's the perfect time to talk about it now. We don't have to wait till later. Basically, I was going to ask you about the differences in like what you're doing, which I didn't even notice at first that you had a Magic Castle T-shirt on. That's so cool. One of our favorite places, of course. But your act at the castle, say, in comparison to, or just the fact that it's very different than what you would do. You don't have as much time there to do like your headlining show, and what you did on Fool Us.
And now for a meaningless, dramatic gesture. Woo. It gets better, guys. It gets better. I just kind of take the lid off and drop the ball straight into my hand, Allison. Just kind of drop that. Yeah, just kind of drop that straight. Oh, check this out. Check this out. Here, take a finger. Give it a tickle, Allison. Give it a tickle.
A tickle.
But the ball doesn't fit through the top. So the only way this could happen is if that ball came into existence inside the jar. Penn Teller, we have a gift for you, gentlemen, as well.
Thank you so much.
That is amazing, Nathan. Coe Marsh, everybody.
Yeah, let's talk the golf ball. The golf ball is funny. It was really, and it's funny now because it's the I'm so grateful to Fool Us. I'm so grateful for the platform it gave me. I'm so grateful for the footage it gave me, right? All those things. And for what those, the way, when I first heard the pitch for Fool Us, before I'd even seen an episode, I thought it was going to be a horrible show. And I thought it was a huge mistake because it emphasized this element of magic that I hate, right? And they took that concept and they executed it in the most loving way to the community of magicians, and did it in a way that really makes magic the star, with the sort of weird, uncomfortable side effect that there are more people who come up to us in meet and greets and clearly think, in part from the show, that a show like this is a contest and that it's their responsibility to sit back and fool. And if we fooled them, we win, and if they figured it out, they win. And that's a challenge, right? But it's always a challenge with magic, and Fool Us didn't create that. But my mixed feelings about it now are just, I look back and I'm a little embarrassed by that clip. Like I've grown a lot as a performer since then, and it was a piece. I think of it almost like a corporate piece. It was a piece that I created for a very specific situation, which was I realized as I watched the first couple seasons, and I live in Orlando, so I was at a watch party for Kostya Kimlot's first Fool Us, which was fabulous. He gets, and it was in some sense the very best of Fool Us, because he gets this very genuine reaction of astonishment from Penn. It's not just like, oh, we can't figure out your puzzle. It's like he was amazed, and it was a beautiful moment. And on the business side, that helped me sort of realize the potential of the opportunity that we had with Fool Us, that there weren't other TV shows that were necessarily looking for magicians they'd never heard of, and the ones that were interested in making good TV. And to them, that could be showing how bad magic was, or it could be showing how good magic was, and they didn't care. They want eyeballs, right? So they'll either cast you as this guy's incompetent, and so I had a friend who did talent, and they were like, oh, it'd be very interesting for our producers to get some B-roll of how you arrange your case, and could you show them that? And so he does that, and they cut that B-roll in, and edited it as if he was packing up to leave because he was embarrassed by the set. So just that kind of deceptive, and I didn't want to play
Yeah.
those games, and I wasn't interested in that.
I call him
So I
America's
was
Got
like, I
Issues.
needed. Yeah,
That's,
yeah, yeah,
that's how I
absolutely,
phrase
absolutely.
it.
So, and the reason I say a corporate thing is what I did was I said, I have this objective of getting on Fool Us. So I watched, at that time, I was season 3. So I watched the first 2 seasons, but I watched all of the people I had never heard of. Because what I wanted to know was not, okay, they hired Kostya Kimlot because he has a earned reputation as a fabulous performer, and John Armstrong, and I wanted who were the people I'd never heard of, because I wanted to see what were they looking for in the material itself. And I saw that there were these themes of technology, okay, and in the monologue for the Fool Us, I talk about technology, right, for that reason. And the other thing was really strong, arresting visuals. So things that were unusual, things that were not, obviously the cliche is they don't want cards because a guy in a suit with a deck of cards in front of him looks like a guy in a suit with a deck of cards in front of him. And there's a visual sameness to that. That they understandably don't want, for the same reason that, and this is something we can also talk about later, why we want visual variety in the production of our show and the design of our show to keep things looking different and keep an audience engaged. So I was like, and so I was going back through my notebooks, and I've always loved Robert Harbin's card in bottle, a beautiful routine. The late Martin Lewis, I saw perform it. And I always loved that. And I long thought it was too strong to be a card trick. Not one of the strongest thing in my my main show is a card trick. One of the very strongest moments. So, a Chan Canasta piece. But so nothing against card tricks themselves, but
Right.
it was a very strong, this thing is empty, it's isolated in the space. It's totally impossible, and a thing appears in it. And then there was this almost irrelevant beat of, and it's the card that you happen to choose. It takes this very pedestrian, familiar, predictable, the card trick of all card tricks, and tacks it on the end of this impossible appearance of an object. The other thing I always loved was I loved Harry Impossible bottles, but they were always an object that was just sitting on somebody's shelf, right? And other than, and I didn't know this at the time, but really, to the best of my knowledge, other than David Berglis, at the time I had done it, I'm not aware of anybody else having incorporated them into an actual magic trick. So David Berglis had a great routine where he took a milk bottle, and he's on like the 3rd story of a building, and a rope, and he tosses it out the window. And when they pull it up, there's a pear that completely fills the bottle, and it's impossible. And I wasn't aware of this at the time. So David gets huge credit for that, and everything. I mean, he's everything when it comes to creating mythic magic, to finding ways of doing magic that makes, as Michael Close would say, makes the audience the storyteller. So I was
But I get what you
hey,
mean. Like
I
a
want to.
pear shouldn't be able to fit in a bottle. I get what you're saying, but a card is impressive as it is. That, oh wow, how'd the card get there? The fact that it's in the bottle isn't as, because you can put a card in a bottle, whereas how the heck do you get a pear or a golf ball in there?
Yeah, and impossible objects are interesting, but the problem with them is they were just things on the shelf. I wanted to create a trick that created an impossible object and gifted it to the audience, right? And I think other people were thinking along similar lines. And Simon Cornell was doing some experimentation with that, and I'm sure other people that I wasn't aware of were doing experimentation of that. But it was kind of interesting to me that, and with love for these people, and no shade at all, but it was kind of funny that since my Fool Us clip aired, there have been multiple commercial releases of, hey, here's how we make a Rubik's Cube appear inside a bottle, and then you can gift it to them as an impossible object. And to my knowledge, none of them have acknowledged, hey, this thing of doing the trick with the impossible bottle and getting it happened to, just a couple of years before we released it, happened to be on national TV. And suddenly, where there had been no tricks released like that, then suddenly you see multiple people doing that. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and there was never any credit offered there. But to your question, so it was really a question of looking at what was the buyer wanting, and making something for the buyer. And so that's why I was like a little bit like, it's not my best, in the same way that custom magic you create for corporate events, it's a great challenge and it's a great problem to solve, but it's not a part of your soul that you're sharing with other people. And so it was something that I kind of created to fit within the needs of the special and to get on TV and to have an element that could potentially fool them, which I was thinking was the impossible jar itself. And we were having conversations back and forth with Johnny and Michael about whether that would qualify as fooling under sort of the rules. And they never got back to me. So I didn't know to really push back when Penn was like, well, we don't know how you did that. And so I didn't know whether to push back or not. Because the other thing, if people are interested in doing a Fool Us, and you'll hear this throughout the process and whatnot if you do, is that several people have not made air on Fool Us hires more people than they need each season. So each season people are going to be paid, flown to Vegas, perform, and just through the numbers, and some of the best magicians in the world, and just won't make air, right? And one of the ways people who've done very good segments have not made air is they've been so obsessed with the contest element that what the show needs from a TV perspective is a clean, exciting ending. They either need, oh man, you fooled them, isn't that exciting? Or, well, it didn't fool Penn and Teller, but boy, that was cool and fun. Wasn't that amazing, everybody? And a nice, clean ending. They don't want to end on this conflict of, no, I fooled you, blah, blah, blah. So people have done that and then not made air. So I didn't want that. So without the sort of official blessing from Johnny and Michael to push back on the jar itself, I was just like, oh yeah, absolutely. Goodbye. You've got this. But that was the reason for the jar, and it fell out of my repertoire.
But you handled that with complete dignity. Like you handled that with complete dignity, and as a pro, and knew that you did a great job. And like there was nothing about that you did. That was a perfect ending of you leaving, having made friends with them and done an amazing performance. And the fact that you didn't push back, I think, just adds to your confidence in your own skill and what you do, knowing that it's not necessary. I did my job. I did what I'm here to do, and I appreciate it. And that I think that came across as great. And you brought up Koista. I was there for his second appearance on Fool Us.
Cool.
I was there. I got to be in the crowd, and I was backstage because when Ed Ripley was on, he brought me as his advisor, which basically just meant like, I got a free trip to Vegas because I just really needed to check one thing of like, okay, you look good from this angle and my job's done, So I was like, I would love to go and see how this whole show works. And something interesting is, speaking of dignity and knowing how to go out on top. I don't know if you remember where he dribbles the cards and then he snatches. That was his second effect on Fool Us. And he snatches the card out of the middle. So we're backstage in the green room. I'm the only one sitting there because I'm just waiting, till Ed needs me to go, and he's kind of practicing his bit. And then essentially he showed me exactly what he was doing, which I still don't know why he decided to share that with me. I didn't ask or anything, of course. Sure. And maybe because he thought I saw something anyway. And I just remember thinking, this is so ridiculous. This is so utterly ridiculous that I was even wondering, is he messing with me? Like, is that not even, is this not even true? And
he's shared this publicly. He had a very great strategy with Fool Us, which was he wanted the methods to be such that Penn would express amazement at the method when revealing it. And he wasn't expecting to fool them with the first thing, with the triumph. But he was expecting them to appropriately, because it's a technically very, very demanding approach, as is the second thing, for them to, so he wanted something that was going to put him in the most positive light, whatever the outcome was, which was a really great way of gaming the situation, especially early on when we were figuring out what is this Fool Us thing and how does it go through. But real quick, for anyone who's considering doing the show, my experience and the experience of many other folks has been that you do in meet and greets, people who are fans of the show are like, did you fool them? And they're a little, you frame it in a positive light of, well, it was a great experience. And, but the bounce to my career, I think, has nothing to do with whether or not you fooled them. That
Right.
there is a marginal, people being like, oh, he fooled Penn and Teller becomes a shorthand in the same way that a standing ovation becomes a shorthand. But I think the thing that gave the biggest benefit is having a solid performance that's entertaining and engaging and shows off what you do well. And it was one of the reasons I included a little custom comedic dialogue at the beginning about the show itself. Was A, to stand out because nobody had really commented on this kind of weird dynamic of the show. But B, I kind of wanted to put on footage in a reel, like he can write funny stuff about the situation that he's in. So that's how I would frame it for everybody: is don't get distracted by the game, but get distracted by how do I create something really cool on TV that's going to be really, really entertaining. And then once I've done that, if I've got extra time, let me figure out how can I really fry them and get that great moment of the trophy coming down. But yeah.
I want to come back to that aftermath in just a moment, but just to finalize that thought, do you remember Koista's ending? And I hope I'm saying it right. It's such a hard name to say. You remember at what happened at the end?
It's the reason I think at Starbucks he's Keith or Kyle or yeah.
Oh,
but continue.
Yeah, right. Keith got double espresso for Keith.
Yeah.
So they essentially said, we don't think there's anything to figure out. We think that you're doing what you say you're doing. That we don't think there's a trick, a gimmick, that there's no need to, you're not actually fooling us. We believe that you have the skill that you say you have. So he responds by saying, like, so basically you think I'm like a ninja and I'm fast enough to just dribble the cards. And they said yes. And I'm sitting in the audience, like, knowing what he showed me backstage. And I'm like, and he goes, well, you're right. Yep. You got it. And I was like, this guy's my hero, because he knows that they didn't figure it out, but the fact that they essentially just, Penn and Teller just called him a ninja, he's going to accept that compliment as a win and walk off with pride and with an amazing ending. And I'm like the only one that knows the difference in the crowd going, oh my God, this guy, what amazing, like, dignity. And, I wish more people brought that type of clout to their performance, to have that type of self-confidence. To
and
realize,
it's a
like,
free
that is
thing,
a win.
and it's something we can choose to do. We can choose to, throughout Magic, we frame what's happening for the audience and we put it in a context to them. And when you really, there's a line in Eric Mead's book where he says equivoque is a way of life. And I love that. And he's absolutely, and that's exactly it, that we choose what the effect is. And that has profound implications methodologically, but it also has profound implications to how we define success, how we and how we just in every interaction find a way to choose dignity and kindness or whatever works best for our character.
It's an example of putting the art first and not yourself. And too many people, I think, try to think too much about what their needs are and what they want, not what the audience needs. And how do I end this act appropriately to make sure that this moment was as magical and special as it can be? And that's putting the art first. And that there's something to be said to any performer that always has that goal in mind and proves that in their performance. The aftermath. So I was just having this conversation with other people who have been on the show about taking advantage of that amazing exposure. And like you said, that it's done so many great things for your career, that it wasn't about, winning the trophy or how, the end of it or fooling or not of doing a great performance and having that exposure. How, what have you done to take advantage of that? How did you ride that wave, so to speak? And how did it uplift your career?
Well, the biggest thing it did was it made me qualified for, at that time, what I say may not be accurate anymore, right? Because Fool Us has gone on for so long. At
What
the time,
season?
it was
What season was it?
I was season 3.
Oh wow!
Season
Okay, 3. I didn't realize it was that while ago. Yeah, so they're about to hit 11.
So this was 2016. Yeah, so this was 8 years ago. I am ancient.
Yeah, you don't look it. You're probably taller than me and younger than me. We haven't established that you're taller because we're on Zoom, but you probably are.
Who knows? It'll be a mystery forever, Michael. But yeah, so for me at the time, because it was a more exclusive credit, I think it had a little more punch to it. But the basic thing it did was it said to it's what got my first ship agent to take a look at me. Didn't get me all the way through, but it was like, oh, he's been on national TV. There's a reason I should look seriously at this and actually watch this person's video, and then based on that, invite them to a showcase, right?
Yeah.
So it did that. It said he's reached this minimal bar of qualification that any non A-list celebrity gig I'm qualified for. They're like, oh, he must be good enough for this. Is that the case now? It might not be, because frankly, there have been so many performers on there of frankly very widely different quality levels and entertainment levels, including folks who did a fabulous job, you know, from a perspective of the trick, and that's what they love about it, and that's great, and that's why they're there. But people now know just doing that doesn't mean you're necessarily able to have an audience on the edge of their seats for 75 minutes, right? Those are two different skill sets. But at the time, it gave me that minimum qualification, gave me footage I'm still using 8 years on in my demo reel. It gave me just a great experience of putting together this custom thing and learning from it. And yeah. So it's and it gave me the I've done this thing. So now I don't have to go chasing, for me and my goals, I don't have to go chasing other TV and other, you know, playing that whole game. So because I got the stuff I needed on the reel for now, and maybe a little later we'll reconsider that. But yeah, those were the benefits. Yeah.
So I know I only have you for a little while longer, and I do want to talk about, as you talked about the development of the golf ball routine, and a little bit about the threads that come about in your hour-long performance. What I think is probably one of your most beautiful pieces, I would love to know how it came together, is your instruction manual.
Oh yeah. Oh, thank you, Michael. Yeah. So that had a very specific genesis point, and it's somebody who has been a huge influence on my magic. Huge influence before I ever met him was Michael Close, and his Workers books were kind of my Bible. It's funny, I do nothing from them. I've maybe in my lifetime done one or two tricks out of them, but the way those books set about the problem solving process, like the way he breaks down moment for moment why he's doing what he's doing and how he solved problems and what problems occurred to him, made me much better as a magician, and were a huge part in how I approach creating material. And that's Michael Close. And Michael,
did you say the title? So Michael Close.
Oh, the original. So this is not where, we'll back up to where the IKEA instructions are. Mike's seminal original books were the Workers series. It's 5 books. They're now they're now available as a single ebook, and you can have it printed out if you want. Yeah, so those are from and we'll find the link and put it up there. But Michael's stuff is fabulous, and I highly recommend it. Michael took for years. There's a wonderful routine, Vernon's Variant, which is a you do as I do card trick. And it's the audience, you have some aces, and the audience does some things with these aces. And despite the fact that they follow along with you and you've got 4 cards in your hands, all these magical things happen with yours that are different from theirs. They can't do what you're doing, right? And then somebody else added a beat where one of the cards in yours changes color at the end. And this makes more sense if you're familiar with, you know, it's from Ultimate Secrets of Card Magic, but it's somewhat obscure trick, but really cool. And what Michael did that was so brilliant was he made a presentation about that was about assembling IKEA. So he's like, we're together, we're going to try and do this like we're assembling IKEA. And it does, and it makes sense that no matter how clear he is, the other person's trying to do it and it doesn't work. And then at the end, one of their cards changes red, and it's like, oh, so he uses the fact that the IKEA instructions have you know, the Swedish names. So he's like, we were trying to put together a Nerfenferber, but you have a part from a Forgenjurger, and it's a red card, right? brilliant presentational premise. And there's a joke in there that, with Michael's permission, one joke that's in the IKEA routine that I do, which I do want to, just because I know a lot of magicians see that, I do want to be clear, this is a one of my signature pieces, and it's something you'd be be physically able to do this if you're a competent magician, but not ethically. So please stay away. This is just as an example of making your material more relatable. And so I loved the relatability of doing a trick about IKEA. And for a while on stage, I was doing Michael's trick, but instead of cards, I'd made these large plastic things that were like IKEA, and the person was following along. And I'd also always loved torn and restored newspaper. Denny Haney was a huge influence on me, and the biggest influence on me, and the guy who's most responsible for me having a career now. And Denny absolutely killed with the torn and restored newspaper, and Jeffrey Durham absolutely killed with the torn and restored newspaper. But it's no longer a relatable object. It's a little bit like what all the Hoffman turned vase tricks were when we were growing up. It was like, what the heck is this? Because anybody who is under 30 probably has never sat down with a newspaper physically at their table and done that. So I was looking for, how can I make that newspaper more relatable? And it fell in mind that, oh, these could be IKEA instructions, and now it has motivation. And I built, as Mike's joke about IKEA is kind of in the center spot of that monologue, and I sort of wrote out here and I wrote out here, and had some finesse on the method. But it's taking something that has all the benefits of the torn and restored newspaper. It's incredibly visual, but it's very, very funny, and it keeps going, and it deals with a relatable object. So for me, the lesson that I like to offer other magicians about it is finding a trick that you love from an old book or from an old source that's with something that you can no longer do because it's like, what's this? And relate it to contemporary objects. Somebody who does this really, really well, my friend Eric Buss, has a dancing, and again, stay away from this is Eric's piece, but has a dancing CVS receipt. So he does the dancing Hank, but with the long CVS receipt, and it goes in a bag. Right. And so it's all the strength of that routine, but instead of being like, what is this thing? It's an object that's relatable to people and makes sense. So
love Eric Buss. It made me think of, do you remember, which I was gonna ask, I didn't know you're influenced by Michael Close. I was gonna ask if Looney Tunes had been part of your influence for that. You remember Goofy? I think it was Acme Instructions, where he had to do different things, and he had this voiceover telling Goofy what to do, and it was just, of course, he'd always do everything wrong. It was really funny. Like that's
great.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I didn't remember that particular thing, but that's great. And that's a great thing. Like, if that's part of your childhood, like, what a great thing to find a way to bring in front of an audience. And with so many you do as I do, or we do this and it goes wrong, that would be great for like the glass of water thing that everybody does, right? With the, the slush powder and the do this and do that, or the Siri tricks, or the, banana bandana, like, that's an angle into it. So that's a great example of how you, okay, here's this magical thing. Now, what in the real world and what in the culture can connect to that? And that's very important to me as a performer. That might be what's up my sleeve too, is finding ways to take the DNA of strong classical magic and make it relevant to contemporary audiences.
That's great, and that's not an easy thing to do. That's I think that's something that a lot of performers, that's where they're lacking, is that they haven't really made sense of their story. They haven't really adapted it to why are you actually doing this, or why are you bringing us this idea? It hasn't been justified in that way. You have given us so much. This is great. You've given us so much good material here, great content that I hope everybody is going to learn from. I'd love to. I know you're going to be off all over the place, and I'd love to bring you back sometime to discuss even in more detail and further. But let's talk about where you are now, meaning in the present day, since we've time traveled to the past, where you're in Dickens Theater in the past, but where you are now, you're on a cruise ship right now.
I'll be on board the Ritz-Carlton yacht Everma in the Mediterranean. So might be hard to get a last-minute ticket, but hey.
But if you're able to, it'd be a great way to catch your show. What's the dates are like? How long are you there?
In the middle of October. I don't know the dates off the top of my head. So, yeah, 2 weeks in the middle of October. So, yeah.
That's a great venue, and that's going to be like your hour-long show.
It'll be 2 different 45-minute shows.
2 different 45-minute shows. Nice.
Yeah.
That's a lot of material. Difficult to be able to establish that much for sure for a lot of people. I'm guessing. Wonderful. This has been fabulous. I wish that I could go see you on the cruise ship. That would be fantastic. So, but maybe not this month, but hopefully at some point. Absolutely,
soon, yeah.
Absolutely love cruises. Would love to perform, but just love being on a cruise. That's definitely, I don't get seasick. So I'm lucky that way that I could tour the world on a ship, no problem. And well, even if it's not on a ship, I would love to meet you in person, not just to see you perform, but just to say hello and see how tall you actually are. Thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you, Michael.
We've loved having you, and good luck with your past performance at Dickens, and good luck with your present performance on the cruise ship, and happy Halloween to you as well. And
happy Halloween.
We'll try to bring you back soon. This has been fantastic.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for all you do for the community as well. This is fabulous.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Nathan Coe Marsh.